The first thing I noticed about the armor was that it looked tired, which was ridiculous because metal couldn't get tired. But this one somehow radiated the emotional energy of a warrior who'd seen too many explosions and not enough vacations. It leaned against the wall outside the engineering bay like it had decided to take 5 minutes for itself. And since no one was around, I figured the noble thing to do was give it a little polish. On Earth, people appreciate that sort of kindness. Apparently, on alien warcruisers, people do not. But in that moment I didn't know this, so I hummed cheerfully while scrubbing scorch marks left by what I assumed had been a large laser blast or possibly someone's very bad day. I didn't even question why the armor was as tall as me, or why the chest plate had dents the size of meteor pebbles. I was just proud of my reflection on the shiny metal, and thinking I might actually be useful on board for once. I had just leaned in to buff a stubborn smudge when a shadow fell across me, long and sharp like someone had dropped a curtain over the hallway lights. I turned, still holding the cleaning cloth, and found myself staring at Kalira. Her long ears, elegant and tapered, were raised so high they nearly brushed the ceiling. She was frozen in place, eyes wide, jaw tense, and I wondered whether she'd walked in on a crime scene instead of a maintenance mishap. I opened my mouth to greet her, but she spoke first, very slowly, as if language itself were dangerous. "Human," she said. "Do you know what that means?" I glanced at the armor, glanced back at her, and considered whether the correct answer was yes, no, or please don't vaporize me. I decided to shrug, which was apparently the worst possible choice because the ears shot up even higher. The engineering crew nearby reacted with the speed of people who had trained for exactly this scenario. One alien dropped a plasma wrench. Another dove behind a crate. A third whispered a prayer to a deity whose name I couldn't pronounce even on a good day. I waved awkwardly at them, hoping someone would explain the situation, but they all pretended not to see me, adopting the universal expression of people who wanted absolutely no part of whatever disaster I had just created. Kalira stepped closer, her boots hitting the floor with the ominous authority of someone who had never once in her life made a small entrance. I wasn't sure whether to stand at attention or kneel or possibly roll under the nearest table for safety. She lifted the chest plate I had cleaned and examined it as though expecting it to burst into flames. Her ears twitched, curling slightly at the tips, and she let out a slow exhale that could have been a sigh or a countdown to my execution. "You cleaned my armor," she said, and I nodded helpfully. Yes, it looked like it needed some love. A murmur rippled through the hallway, the kind of murmur that usually precedes major galactic incidents or extremely bad news reports. Kalira blinked rapidly, then fixed me with a stare so intense it felt like she was trying to scan my soul for signs of intelligent life. I smiled weakly, unsure whether to make a joke or run. I chose the joke because that's what humans do when trapped between curiosity and terror. "Look, if you want, I can clean the boots too. I don't charge extra." A few aliens gasped. One fainted. Kalira's ears angled downward now, which somehow felt even more alarming. "In my culture," she said slowly, "touching a warrior's armor is not casual. It is not friendly. It is not housekeeping." I nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Right, of course. Totally not housekeeping. More like deep cleaning." Someone behind me groaned into their hands. She closed her eyes for a long moment as if assembling patience molecule by molecule. "It is a vow," she said, "a promise of loyalty, a binding intention." I felt something cold settle into my stomach, binding as in paperwork, or binding as in you're about to bind me to the hull. Her eyes narrowed. "Binding as in you have pledged yourself to me." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain briefly malfunctioned. Pledged? No, I definitely would have remembered pledging. I can barely remember my room number. She stepped closer, her shadow swallowing mine. The act itself is the pledge. This explained why the crew had scattered like confetti in a gravity malfunction. "So, this is a cultural thing?" I asked. "Very cultural," she replied. And now it must be addressed. I swallowed. Addressed how? Her ears slowly lowered, which I suspected was not a good sign. We will speak to the commanders. Great, I said. Love speaking to commanders. Big fan of authority. She did not smile. Human, she said again, prepare yourself. And as she led me down the corridor, armor in hand, ears angled in a way I could only interpret as impending doom, all I could think was, next time, I am absolutely leaving the armor dirty. The walk to the commander's chamber felt like being escorted to an execution, while also attending a very polite parade. Kalira marched ahead with the rigid posture of someone trying very hard not to look at the idiot who had accidentally pledged himself to her. I followed a few steps behind, resisting the urge to whistle innocently. Every crew member we passed reacted like we were transporting a volatile plasma bomb, one that occasionally said sorry and tripped over its own feet. Some saluted Kalira with dramatic seriousness. Others looked at me with the horrified sympathy usually reserved for people being swallowed by space serpents. I tried to smile at a group of technicians, but one dropped his lunch tray and sprinted away, so I stopped doing that. When the giant doors slid open with a hiss that definitely wasn't helping my nerves, I stepped inside and immediately regretted every life decision that had led me here. The commanders sat in a half circle, their long ears arranged in various angles that I suspected indicated levels of judgment, disbelief, and cosmic annoyance. Kalira saluted sharply. I attempted the same, but my hand smacked my forehead with an audible slap that echoed through the chamber like a tragic gong. One commander twitched an ear in what I'm pretty sure was the alien version of a facepalm. Kalira cleared her throat with enough force to shake the air molecules. "Commanders," she said, "the human has enacted the oath of armor." The entire room stiffened. If the lights had dimmed and dramatic music had played, I wouldn't have been surprised. One commander leaned forward, long ears tilting like antennae zeroing in on a malfunctioning beacon. "Human," he said gravely, "did you willingly perform this act?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Willingly? Yes. Knowingly? Absolutely not. Accidentally? Very much yes. A ripple went through the room. Another commander narrowed his eyes. "You admit to touching a warrior's armor." Touching. I laughed nervously. I practically gave it a full spa treatment. Kalira made a choking noise. It might have been a suppressed laugh or a suppressed urge to strangle me. I wasn't sure. The commanders exchanged glances filled with the silent communication of beings who had known each other for centuries and were trying to telepathically decide whether I was dangerous, incompetent, or both. One tapped a console, bringing up a hologram of their cultural traditions. Glowing text floated between us, including a section titled Intimate Acts That Should Never Be Performed Lightly. Cleaning armor was listed as number 3, right below sharing one's ancestral blade, and above allowing someone to see your unbraided ears. I raised a hand. If it helps, on my planet cleaning someone's stuff just means we're trying to help. Half the time we even complain about it. The oldest commander leaned back. Intent does not change tradition, but can it change consequences? I asked hopefully. They ignored me. Kalira stepped forward, her expression composed but her ears angled downward in embarrassment. "Commanders, the human did not know the meaning. He is uninformed." I grinned. That's the nicest way anyone's ever called me clueless. She shot me a warning glance. The commanders huddled together, their ears forming a tangled pattern like an alien knitting project. After a long moment, they separated and the eldest spoke. "By custom, the bond cannot be dismissed. It must be honored, tested, and evaluated." I blinked. Evaluated like a school exam, more like determining whether your partnership is functional or a hazard to the galaxy, he said. "Ha," I said weakly, "no pressure." The commander continued. "Kalira, you will act as the human's guide. You will instruct him in our ways. You are temporarily bound." Kalira inhaled sharply. "Temporarily?" The eldest nodded. "If, after one cycle, it is clear the bond is incompatible, it may be ceremonially dissolved." I perked up. So we can undo it. If you both prove it untenable, the commander said. If not, the bond becomes permanent. I chuckled, thinking he was joking. He was not joking. Kalira stood frozen, ears slowly lowering to the defeated angle of someone who had received a cosmic homework assignment she had never asked for. Understood, she said quietly. They dismissed us with a gesture, and I followed Kalira out of the chamber, resisting the urge to flee in the opposite direction. Outside, she stopped abruptly, turning to me. Her expression was unreadable, but her ears twitched like they were debating whether to stand up or give up entirely. Human, she said, you will follow me. I will teach you enough not to cause further cultural disasters. I raised a finger, just to clarify how many disasters are we talking about, because statistically, do not finish that sentence. Right, I said, ending sentence, sentence ended. She walked on. I hurried after her, wondering how I had gone from cleaning armor to being bound by ancient alien tradition in less than an hour. But as we rounded a corner and her ears flicked in frustration, I caught the tiniest curve at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile, just the shadow of one. And for the first time since this mess started, I thought maybe, just maybe, this bond was not going to be the disaster everyone feared. Or at least, it would be a very entertaining disaster. Our mission began with Kalira walking 3 steps ahead of me like she was escorting a volatile specimen that occasionally asked too many questions. I tried to keep my voice down as we approached the shuttle, but subtlety wasn't my strength. So this evaluation, we just survive it, right? Kalira didn't look back, preferably without you touching anything sacred, dangerous, or expensive. I opened my mouth to argue, then remembered I had once accidentally pledged myself by cleaning armor, so I closed it again. The shuttle lifted smoothly, stars sliding past as we jumped into the mineral belt where a rogue drone swarm had been detected. Apparently our bond was to be tested under moderate threat, which felt optimistic for a swarm known for turning small vessels into cosmic confetti. Inside the belt, debris floated like frozen shrapnel. Kalira's long ears angled forward, sensing movement before the scanners did. I wished I had something equally useful, but all I had was nervous commentary, which she informed me several times was not a tactical asset. When the first drone streaked toward us, she moved with effortless precision, spear slicing through the metal like it was soft fruit. I, on the other hand, grabbed the emergency rail and yelled something unheroic. Human, she called, the controls. I looked at the glowing console, which resembled a puzzle built by someone who disliked humans personally. But I sat down, swallowed my panic, and tried anyway. The shuttle jerked, then steadied, then spun slightly, but Kalira's ears flicked in baffled approval. You are piloting. I'm improvising. That is working. The drones regrouped, and Kalira braced for impact, but I noticed something odd. Their flight pattern pulsed rhythmically, like a signal echo. Kalira, I said, they're not attacking, they're glitching. She hesitated, then nodded. Their core is near. If destroyed, they will deactivate. Great, I said, one small glowing weak spot in a field of deadly metal, perfect odds. She gave me a look that was either encouragement or a warning not to die. We plunged deeper into the belt, the swarm tightening around us like an angered storm. I weaved between rocks the size of houses, occasionally screaming, occasionally laughing. Kalira stood at my side, stabilizing the shuttle with precise adjustments. We were messy and chaotic, but strangely effective. When the core beacon finally appeared, pulsing blue in the shadows of a massive asteroid, Kalira prepared to leap out and destroy it manually. Wait, I said, grabbing her arm. I have another idea. Her ears tilted suspiciously. Does it involve explosions? Hopefully fewer than normal. I rerouted the shuttle's signal output, boosting a harmonic pulse I had no right to tamper with. The swarm paused mid-flight, frozen like confused birds. The core flickered. Kalira stared. You disrupted their link. I annoyed them into confusion, I corrected proudly. She actually smiled. A real one. Finish it, she said. Together we launched the pulse again. The drones collapsed into harmless metal dust. The core winked out like a dying star. Silence filled the shuttle, the kind of silence that felt earned. Kalira lowered her spear, her ears softening. "Human," she said quietly, "you acted with intent." "Good intent," I clarified. "Mostly, and courage." I blinked. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "You." The return flight was less tense, though Kalira insisted on piloting this time after I accidentally activated the hazard siren while adjusting my seat. When we arrived back at the cruiser, the commanders awaited us, ears arranged in intimidating symmetry. They requested our report, and Kalira stood tall. The human acted honorably. Our bond functions. I tried not to look too proud, but my face didn't cooperate. The eldest commander considered us for a long moment. "Do you wish to dissolve the bond?" he asked. Kalira looked at me. Her ears lowered, not in shame, but softness. Warmth, a question. I swallowed, remembering the terrified man who had cleaned armor because it looked tired. I wasn't that man anymore. "I don't," I said. "If she doesn't." Kalira's voice was steady. "I do not." The commanders nodded, formal and solemn. "Then the bond stands." Later, as we walked through